Dominic, this is Tom Klingon. Since your microphone is apparently on, can you hear me?
Me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, good, because everybody else is muted and I just want to make sure the mic was working.
I don't. I'm no expert at using this stuff, and
Yeah,
I
me
do my
neither.
best. But whoever chased down that opinion from the attorney, I really want to thank him for that. I think it's very important, and I appreciate the follow through.
Larry, I'm assuming that was your doing with Patrick?
Patrick was the go-between, yes.
Well, it was quick work and thank you for taking care of that. That was an issue we should have raised a while ago, Dominic, but you were the only one who asked about it. Thank you.
Well, you know, I like I said, in my emails, back in my Livingston County days, there was quite enough people statewide about, you know, people being properly appointed and all of that. And I felt it'd be for the good of the order, period. You know, I really appreciate the attorney's response, and it's exactly what we all need. So thank everyone.
We do have a quorum. Although I'm not sure who's billing him or herself as the redistricting commission.
That would be the intern, Nick.
Okay, Nick, thank you. I just wasn't sure exactly who that was. As I said, we do have a quorum, and there appears to have been some interest in having the issue of the mapping RFP handled first. So who wants to talk about that?
I'm Joan. I can.
Okay, I was gonna say, I think all three of us are here, but
Yes.
so.
We met yesterday to discuss the scoring for the mapping RFP.
We
And each-
had independently scored, just so the committee's clear on what we had done. We had gone through the
Yeah, we did.
RFPs and independently scored, and then met just to discuss what we came up with independently to see if there was a consensus.
And what happened is we started out by giving the count of 1, 2, or 3, the ranking of what we did. And each one of us has chosen the same firm as number 1. So we had a unanimous recommendation for the mapping. And the committee consensus unanimously that AppGEO would be our number 1 recommendation to this commission for the mapping of the 2021 mapping contract. And if you'd like to add, we decided that we needed to go first because that would make moot the point of accepting someone late, because independently, each one of us chose someone else. So it didn't matter if there were 2 people did the scoring on all 4. I did the scoring on the 3, and the way it turns out. So I think it's going to be a moot point whether or not to accept the 4th or possibly late bidder. So that's why we wanted to go first, to hopefully save time on today.
Just a clarification, the AppGEO fee was on my copy listed as $62,500. That's the amount that we're approving or has been proposed for approval.
I think it's 62,400.
Yes, Patricia.
Oops, sorry. So the only thing that I would ask, am I still muted or can you guys hear me? You still hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, it said I was still muted. The only thing that I would ask is, you guys filled out a matrix, right?
We each independently filled out matrices for each of the RFPs that we received. The only difference was that Joan did not do one for Benjamin Center because it came to us late, but Sita and I did.
Okay,
But the other three, all four of us filled out the matrix independently and then reviewed our results together.
all right. So you compare, you all independently did it and then reviewed together, and you were pretty much in consensus on a lot of what you saw?
I think we were in consensus, or if I'm stating, Sita and Joan, I'm sure will correct me if I'm misstating, but my understanding from what I remember from our discussion and my notes that I took from our discussion is that we were in line across the board, with the exception of the Benjamin Center, only because Sita and I were in line with the Benjamin Center, but obviously Joan was not, because she didn't do that one.
Right.
But other than that, we were in line with both our reasoning and our recommendations.
Okay, so the only thing that I would ask to feel comfortable is if you sent out your evaluations. So to see is it gross differences between them or close or whatever?
I'll just fill out those Excel sheets with the number that Patrick sent, and that I can send, but I'm not typing out all the notes and stuff that I made with regard
that's
to
fine.
like what's in each proposal, but I can send out the numbers. Yeah.
We actually, that was what we had also discussed yesterday, was that we thought that we would ask what was the most useful to the committee in terms of seeing how we came to our decision. So that's what we assumed, was that would be useful to fill out the kind of Excel spreadsheet matrix with each of our scoring. But we have not yet done that, but we can easily do that.
I'll send it out sometime this week for sure.
Okay, because I think
And that-
not just, I'm sorry, Larry.
That I think needs to be a part of the official records of the commission.
Correct.
And I think what needs to be a part of the official record is what this commission agreed and voted on as the evaluation tool.
Mhm.
Because that's the one that we agreed as a commission to do, and that's the one that I have done. I think that was the question that we needed to have. Which document was the correct document to do? The commission approved of the one that Patrick sent.
Well, the Patrick sent is just an Excel file sheet where you just input the numbers that you had already on the matrix
It was a
onto one
summary.
sheet. So all 3 or 4
Yes,
of
it's
the
a summary.
are on one
Yeah.
sheet. It just makes things a little streamlined instead of sending in
Right.
multiple sheets.
It, at least in my email, it had all come together, the document with it, the more detailed document, and then the summary Excel sheet. So I think my understanding was that all of that was part in the same thing.
I don't agree with that, and I don't think so, but I'm sending in the one the commission approved. Let me put it that way.
I don't think it matters. It's the same thing. It's except in a different format. It's just like going from the multiple sheets of the matrix to filling out the numbers on the Excel sheet, which already has all the same things that are on that matrix, on that Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it's not anything different like from the matrix itself.
Right.
It just
Right.
makes things easy. I mean, I'm just going to send my Excel sheet.
So
you guys.
what's useful to the commission? Should we send it to each person individually, or can we just send it to the main mailbox? And
Send it to the redistricting commission email.
Okay.
okay, that's what I thought we were doing from here on out, but I just wanted to make sure.
Right.
Yep, I can send mine out after this later tonight, so you'll have it.
I'll send it by
Great.
tomorrow.
Super. Thank you all. Are there questions for the group with regard to their recommendation?
So, go ahead, Dominic.
I'm sort of new to the game here, so if somebody maybe could very briefly give some background on the firm you selected.
I think that everybody received the RF documents, right? Not just us.
All of the
Dominic may
commission members did.
Yeah.
Not the MMD though, correct?
Right.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure that I feel like I can summarize the app geo in a way that makes sense, contrasting it with the other organizations, other than just summarizing what my scoring was, which you're going to get from the matrix. But I can tell you that all three of us were very impressed with the AppGeo website, which might be the easiest way to get a feel for AppGeo if the RFQ or the RFP was not, wasn't detailed enough, or
I mean, where is the firm from? What's their experience they bring to the table?
We can send it to you so that you can see it. And when we send out the scoring, we can send the actual response to the RFP from this firm so that you can see for yourself. But they're, if that would be helpful, Dominic.
Okay, that's,
I also did put the website in the chat bar, if that's helpful.
okay.
Any other
Tom,
comments or questions? Yes, Patricia.
So I'm not sure what the next step besides CETA sending out the evaluation. What's the next step in closing this out? Tom?
Tom hasn't.
We need to approve it, but beyond that.
First thing that I want to say is to clarify for Dominic. Dominic, the MMD is actually going to be doing its own RFP. That's actually right in the local law, a separate RFP for mapping services for you guys. This was really just the mapping services to the redistricting commission itself. And the process after this is that it needs to be approved. It's a contract above $20,000. So instead of the county executive having sole approval, it actually goes to a 3-member contracts board that handles all county contracts between $20,000 and $100,000. That particular board has a meeting coming up on Monday. And I reached out today to the county clerk, who was one of the members of the contracts board, to find out what the schedule was. And they are having a meeting next Monday on the 10th. Normally, the deadline would have been today for anything to get in, but I did ask that they consider if we can get this in by tomorrow, our 2 contracts could be considered for approval on Monday. Now, one of the things, at least in the past, when I was the county clerk and I served on contracts board, we always got to see those scoring sheets when there was an RFP. So that would be one thing that would hopefully need to be included in our package that's sent forward. It has to be entered into the county's contract system by someone who's used to doing this and has access to the county system. In our case, it would probably be the person that does it for the clerk of the legislature, and that's Patrick Collins. We've kind of severed our connection with the county legislature clerk's office now that we have our own interns. But I think in this instance, it's really just a ministerial thing for someone from that office to enter the information into the system and forward it to the division of the budget, the county division of the budget, to get properly put before the contracts board for approval. The other contract that we haven't discussed yet, but I would think it would follow a similar pattern, assuming that we also agree on that one today. So the alternative is that it waits till the February meeting. That's a loss of another 5 weeks before we'd have a contract, and I really would like to see us avoid that if we possibly could. Patricia, did you want to weigh in on that? I know you had some concerns about the legislature clerk's office being involved.
No, and not so much about that, because I think it is totally administrative task to be done. But I think we did leave off on the fact that with Patrick and what's her, Caitlin, no longer available to us really interfacing with the rest of the county departments as needed. I think we need to figure something out, but we can set that aside. So technology wise and, HR, that kind of thing, it just was, they were always our go-between, and it's not always clear if we need to take action, but we could deal with that, I think, as separate.
Larry, if there aren't any further questions, I would move that we approve this contract to AppGeo for mapping.
For a second to that motion?
I second that.
Thank you, Joan. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, just one clarification on the cost. So some of these firms include additional costs, so we're just approving the contract, but some of the costs are sort of add-ons and we don't know what they are at the moment. They're small amounts, but how do we tackle that part of it?
Julia?
I actually don't think AppGeo laid out their contract that way. I think they had a total cost, if I'm remembering correctly.
That's correct.
The ARC and Benjamin Center had additional costs laid out in their proposal, but AppGeo was pretty straightforward. So I'm not sure if we have to tackle that or not.
Okay. You're muted, Mark.
I guess I didn't read theirs specifically, but you said that was like a flat cost. They're going to be at the public hearings, correct? In support. So that's included in the cost?
The only firms that had additional costs was ARC, Bridge, and Benjamin.
But yes, and specifically, Mark, they did lay out in their proposal that they would be available both to help us prepare for public hearings and to be available at public hearings as we wanted them to be, either virtually if we're doing things virtually, or if needed be, their preference is to appear virtually. And they said that, but that if we want them to be there in person, they would make that available as well. And that was included. Yeah.
Good. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Patricia.
I am just going to abstain from voting only because I have not had a chance to look at any of the proposals and would have wanted to see the evaluation and just how that was, but before I approved. But I totally trust you guys on what you did. We can't all be in everything, so thank you.
Leif?
Yes, I trust everyone too and respect the work of the subcommittee, but I'd like to abstain on the same basis. I've not had a chance to look at the proposals.
I believe that we still have enough to approve. If everyone votes in favor, we'll see. If there are no further questions or comments, then all those in favor, please raise your hand in your window so that I can count.
Aye for Joan.
Okay, thank you, Joan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That looks like approval, and opposed is none, and there were 2 abstentions, Leif and Patricia. Okay, thank you all. And I believe that does obviate the necessity for taking any action on the late application. The other major proposal that we had in-house was we had 2 responses to our request for qualifications. Did the group that was reviewing the council proposals review those and have any comments or recommendations?
Leif, do you want to take that?
I can lead on and you can jump in and Warren as well to help me out. We have reviewed it, both proposals. All 3 of us have reviewed it in some detail, and we've been corresponding up until the last few minutes via email and throughout the week. And we also completed our scoring sheets. So we do have a leading vendor of the 2, but to be honest, we haven't had a chance to discuss it verbally amongst ourselves. But I'm quite confident that we are all of the same mind in terms of which proposal was the stronger proposal. One of the proposals appeared to be incomplete, did not really lay out a work plan, and the costs were open-ended, and those were, I think, some serious deficiencies in that second proposal. Tom, do you want to add anything to that? Or?
Yeah, the two proposals were one from New York Law School that I think we talked about in the past as a prospective contractor for counsel services. The other was the law firm of Messina, Perillo, and Hill, MPH for short, out of Suffolk County. Their submission was markedly shorter. They didn't give us resumes, although they did describe the various people amongst the principals who would be working on it. They gave us a cost proposal. It's very short. It simply gives $300 an hour rate for partners, $200 an hour for associates, and $95 an hour for paralegals, but no strict amount and no maximum. The New York Law School proposal, by contrast, did give us resumes of the people who will be working on the project, principally Jeffrey, I think he pronounces it Weiss, W-I-C-E, who is the one who actually is running the New York Census and Redistricting Institute at New York Law School. He would be assisted by Marissa Zanfardino, who is a law student there at the college. The cost quotation, I'll summarize it by saying, reading right from the proposal, $60,000 for complete services plus reimbursable costs for county requested travel to Albany. They do mention later on in that same cost quotation something that I didn't entirely understand. It says, expert minority voting analysis can be conducted if desired by the commission through the additional retention of a qualified expert. This cost should average $10,000 and is not part of this submission's cost quotation. So I'm thinking that the amount that we should approve at this point would be the $60,000 flat amount that they have put in their cost proposal. Both on this particular contract and on the one we just talked about for mapping, we would have the opportunity as a commission to come back to the contracts board if we felt there were additional services necessary down the road, as long as they didn't exceed about 50% of what the base contract is, as long as they didn't get us over the $100,000 mark. So I don't think at this point, the extra $10,000 that New York Law School has proposed really needs to come into play. We'd have to wait and see if we needed that specific additional service from them before we should contract for it. So I think at this point, Warren, did you have anything else you wanted to add as part of your review of this?
Yeah, I would just concur and just say I was a little puzzled by that special redistricting or minority stuff as well. But I presume since we have an MMD, we probably don't need it. But as you said, if we do need to make an adjustment, it would be minor and it should be no problem.
I think, and Tom and Warren, correct me if I'm mistaken on this, but another codicil that they had or additional fill-up they had in their proposal was that if there's litigation, if that they're sued, if the commission is sued and they're a party to that suit or representing us, that would incur an additional cost. At this point, that's an unforeseen item, so I think it's understandable and reasonable that they would not be bidding or quoting a cost for additional litigation. So I was not troubled by that. I just wanted to point that out. In terms of our combined scoring, which I do have here, when we averaged our weighted scores for the two proposals, the New York Law came in with a 4.22, and the MPH, the other proposal, came in at 3.12, and we can happily share that spreadsheet with the commission and for the record.
That's out of a scale where the maximum is 5 for every one of those categories.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. 5-point scale. And
Mark,
we
did you
applied
have
the rates that were in our metrics, our evaluation tool.
This is just when you mentioned the minority extra $10,000 and us working closely with the majority minority district, the way we should be working closely. Is there any way to use this law firm. I know they're going to put out their own RFP, but it seems like the 60,000 is the baseline for the expertise, but we need the extra 10,000 for the majority minority questions. Is there any way we can use them instead of them having to go get a law firm and pay 60,000 or whatever they end up kind of proposals they get? It was hard getting lawyers anyways. If we could slide them into under our umbrella and give them the extra 10,000 to help us out with the majority minority district. Just an idea. It gets to the point where we had a hard time finding lawyers. Are they going to have a hard time finding lawyers? And then
my one observation, just a moment, Marie. My one observation, Mark, is that as I understood that $10,000, that was for them to go out and find an expert in that. It was not for them to provide those services.
No, I understand that, but are they going to have a different law firm that may also have to go out and find an expert in that area? And then they're paying, we're paying double for when we're using the same law plan.
I think the MMD is going to need to cross that bridge for themselves. I'm sorry, Marie, I cut you off.
So, I mean, that's essentially what I was going to say, that I think we have to go down that road separately. And I mean, we'll see how it phases out, but I think at this point, I mean, we're gonna do an RFP for legal counsel as well as for mapping services, and then we'll see where we end up.
Yeah, Mark, I'll say it's a good thought, but they had such little information in the proposal anyway. We have no idea what it meant, as Tom kind of said. So we're clueless to it, what they even meant by that phrase.
Okay, it just triggered it. Geez, if they're going to be doing extra work, let's bring this under the same umbrella. But I understand.
That's a good point, though. I mean, where we can have efficiencies in terms of the work that we're doing, we should try to utilize those efficiencies. But I think
I just want so we're getting the same answers. I'd hate for you to get an answer and then we get a different answer, and then it just adds ambiguity to the whole situation. And we had such a hard time finding one law firm, and now you're going to put out an RFP and it's going to be that much more difficult to find another law firm. So it was just a thought when I heard they brought up the majority or the minority specifics, and I thought that might help us.
One other comment that I had on the two firms that did provide proposals was that I thought that the MPH firm really was a litigation firm, and that it was very clear that what they have expertise in is carrying out redistricting litigation, whereas Professor Weiss's proposal, it was my very clear impression that his goal is to avoid litigation. So I and where we are in the process,
Larry, you muted yourself. Larry, you're muted.
I don't know how that happened, but thank you.
About halfway through your thought.
Well, usually they're only half good anyway. Yeah. One other question that I had, and it really applies to both of these contracts. Should we be reaching out to references prior to moving towards contracting?
I actually had that question as well, and we started to talk about it when we met yesterday, and then we didn't finish the discussion, which was our fault. But I wondered that I had that same thought that at least for the one that we are recommending, I felt like possibly we should reach out to the references before we make a final submission, but then that delays everything again.
And I think what we can do is move it forward, and then over the course of this week, reach out and try to do reference checks. And if something negative comes up, we can have it pulled back from the contracts board.
Okay, so the three of each of us for our separate contracts would agree amongst ourselves who would call what reference and then get back as soon as we can.
And we could do the same for mapping.
Yes, I think that my opinion is we should call the references, and I'm happy. I love making reference calls, so I'm happy to do that.
And I think that we only really need to deal with it if there is negative information that comes back out of the reference calls.
If there aren't any other questions, Larry, are you ready for a motion?
I am, if you are.
Leif, you
Oh,
had
you
your
have a
hand up?
hand up. Yeah.
Just
Oh.
a comment that I just sent the rating sheets from their legal services matrix to Patricia and to Larry. So if you would, at some point, share it with the members of the commission. I don't know how to get it to the general email address. So
It's redistricting commission at Albany County, New York.gov.
okay, I'll try that. Thank you.
Which also at this time includes anyone on the MMD who has an Albany County email address. Just for clarification.
Do we want to include everyone?
That's fine.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I would make
Tom?
that motion, Larry.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Warren, thank you. Is there any further comments or questions? If not, will those in favor please raise your hand in the window so that I can count? Okay, there's 6 yeses. That is sufficient. Thank you all. And we as a group would appreciate if those who were doing the grading would reach out to the references of the individual that's being recommended to go forward. And I will reach out to Patrick with regard to getting both of these contracts moved to the contracts board. Patricia, do you want to take on some of the administrative things?
Yes.
Such as the minutes of the last meeting?
Yeah, so what I'm used to in a lot of meetings is that the minutes of the prior meeting are presented in advance. I don't know if everyone had a chance to read them, and pretty much then commented on and or approved. So if you want, I can share my screen. Host disabled. Nick, can you wait? Let's make sure we change that, guys.
Yep,
So that we can.
give me a second here.
Mhm. So this is all about us all. It's very interesting, I think, because we all, oh, I'm the host now. That gives me really good access. Okay. We all listen with different ears because we all come at it differently. So it's been interesting because the 2 interns and myself, we all come away with slightly different things, right? So we're doing the meeting notes such that we're noting who attends. So if anyone didn't attend today, they would get a cross out in their name, but we're all here today, and breaking out the interns and who's on from the MMD commissioners. And I believe we have this correct for last week. Then we get into the discussion items. So the fact that 3 proposals were reviewed and warning, so forth, what was happening. I won't get into the details. And the council, it is an RFQ. It's an RFP.
No, that is
No,
correct.
No,
It
sorry.
was correct as an RFQ.
The first one is the RFP. Sorry.
Right.
My
Right. The
bad.
mapping was an RFP.
Yeah.
Yep, my bad. Quote
And is that the right
versus-
council? Is that a typo? Is it the right council?
Yes.
That
And-
second council should be SEL.
This is
That one, I
SEL.
didn't see that.
That's right,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I made that mistake recently in work and a lawyer corrected me. Yes.
The line about Warren, Tom, and Leif evaluated legal proposals, that should go really under council RFQ.
Yes, it should. You are correct. Okay,
Yes.
Oh, excuse me, may I add that I was left off the attendance list? This is Adrian. I was
oh,
left off the
Adrian,
atten-
sorry. That's good for, no, that's where KISS.
EE. E. Yeah, great. Yep. And then-
Yep, thank you, Adrian. And it's funny because I don't think you're listed. Are you in by a phone number today? I didn't see you actually looked at the Zoom recording.
There.
No, I am
Okay.
with the Zoom recording, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, no, when I looked at who last time, I didn't see your name and that's just bad for me. Okay, I missed it. Thank you for that.
Sure.
We reviewed what should be in the, what the meetings were versus the date of the recordings, and that it will be updated to the SharePoint, and we're gonna try and do that, so that happened. The recording minutes can also be on specific topics, so we, you know, when I first talked about this last week, I was like, there's the spreadsheet at the bottom was all I was thinking, but we decided we wanted to include more than just the decisions, actions, and open items. We all should be using redistricting, it should be redistricting commission with no space at albanycounty.gov instead of using individual emails. And that's really around the fact that this way it gets to everybody and it's all really within one thing. We talked about sending a contact list for a directory being made and that we wanted to include the MMD committee list on there as two separate links. And this was
Patricia?
really, yep.
The email should have NY at the end of Albany County.
Yep, bad, thank you. Good eyes. So we are planning to do that. I think that Leanne was taking that ownership to do that. The MMD subcommittee's goal is to get the RFPs out, pulling together bios for each member of the subcommittee to have them published on the website. And there's been a string of emails about that, and we can talk about that in a minute. And the other was that Dominic raised the concern about being legally protected. So this is more the detail here. So we have actions, decisions, and open items, and some things are open and closed. So we needed to try and find the meeting recording from 11:15. It was found and it was added to the SharePoint. I think actually there's one recording that's missing. No, maybe we found it, my bad. Need to create a file of the previous commission meeting minutes and notes. So I think I spoke to you about the fact that both Leanne and Nick were going back and looking at reading the recordings from the beginning forward. We didn't make as much progress on that. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of detail, and that is a work in progress for a while. There was a decision made. The commission does not need to hire a transcriber for the meetings. Joan, you raised this, the need for the transcripts. I wasn't sure if Warren, you also, there, when we took it, I wasn't sure if there was just, I think we actually took a vote, and I'm not sure if there was another dissent besides Joan feeling that was necessary. Nick had made the SharePoint site and everyone should be taking a look at it, and we're going to talk about that a bit more. We would distribute previous meeting notes and actions before the next meeting to help everyone get on the same page. So this is really an action, but it will be an ongoing decision that we're going to do this. So before we meet again, we will have the same sort of minutes and notes unless you guys want it any differently. This is what we're going to do. You should be reading them. And then I would ask that we approve them in the next meeting. Next week, add an agenda item to review it, which we're doing. Determine any issues that might result from the extra redistricting at Albany County, New York Gov email address. So when we set things up, it turns out that the legislature had previously
shit.
set up a different email address. And I've been asking, and I need to follow up here as to whether that appears anywhere on the website, anywhere. Because it exists and nobody's monitoring it as far as we know. We needed to create the contact sheet and distribute it to the commission members and the MMD. Use the redistricting commission and all be to address and collect all communications. I guess we have that twice. Oh, it was up above. Create a contact sheet. I did that one. Leave, Tom and Warren are going to review and evaluate. So this would now become closed because they did that. Need to resend a second legal RFQ email. That was the one that Larry and you sent that. It came in, didn't come across as the attachment the first time. Sita, Joan, and Julie are going to review and evaluate. That happened. So this would now become closed. Other committee members will wait to give input on subcommittee recommendations on after that. So we said that no input before you guys did the evaluation, which is done. Raise the item of indemnity defense for commission and subcommission members to Pat Collins. So we will talk about that as an agenda item, I'm assuming, Larry. We should not include outside parties in commission communications. I wasn't sure if Larry said this. I wasn't sure if everybody heard that well and understood that. We need to decide if we want to place our Zoom recordings on the county website. So this is a typical open item and what I'll do is when we do next week's meetings, I'll keep the open items separate. And so we can see what the open items are. Add a hyperlink to the FAQ in the background section on the website page. This came from Joan, and Joan and I have been going back and forth a little bit on this, and I can explain a little bit when we talk about the website and the MMD and so forth. Add links to other laws pertaining to the ACRC activity to the county website. We discussed that and we said we would wait for legal counsel. And I think that's it. So is there any questions on different remembrances, however you want to put it, from this list or from the notes?
Or to the format.
Or to the format. Thank you, Larry.
Right. Yeah. Does anyone have any comments with regard to the minutes on any of those levels? Does it generally work for folks?
Larry, do you want a motion to accept the minutes? Is that appropriate?
I will, but I wanted to first talk about it as a generality as to whether this methodology of doing minutes for our meetings is acceptable to the group. Are there any comments on the means that it's been portrayed?
Well,
Leif.
I think it's a pretty standard way of doing it, but great job putting it all together. That's a lot of work. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I concur here. And I just want to second the suggestion of sorting by open and closed so that all the open items are listed first. And then maybe subsorting by date within open and closed.
And topic is what I was going to do.
And
Yep.
yeah, better yet, topic. Yeah. But thank you.
Any other comments on format? Any comments on content? Are the minutes generally as we met? And if not, if there are no further comments, then is there a motion? Yes, Tom. Thank you.
I would make that motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Is there a second? Thank you, Leif. If there is no further comments or questions, all in favor, please raise your hand. And the motion passes. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you. I do want to just raise, people should take a look at the SharePoint. I have certainly, I'm getting used to it. There's some things that I want to talk to Nick, the way he did stuff is good. But I think we can, I was hesitant actually as to, so you guys need to give feedback because I was hesitant as to whether it was overwhelming a bit or not. So please take a look at it and provide feedback. I had my hesitancies, but last night as I was jumbling around, I went right to the SharePoint and got exactly what I needed. So I like it as a repository. So that's one thing I wanted to note. The other is that I think we have to have a situation with the website. So Joan, I know you wanted the FAQ in the background section. Right now it's on the left-hand navigation bar, and at the bottom, yes, we can also add it. I think it's a little overkill, but the bigger thing here is that Marie wants to go forward with building out the MMD portion, and we've had some back and forth with the web mistress in terms of separate pages together. So I suggested, and this is something for you all to consider, that we put together a small, myself and someone else maybe from the ACRC commission, and then Marie and somebody maybe there to talk about should the website, should it be two separate, completely separate websites? Should it be underneath one another? Should there just be sections inside of pages and things like that? So I think I'd rather not go, as a person who was a development manager, technology development manager, I'd rather not start throwing things at the web mistress until we think it through a little bit. So Marie, if you are in concert with that thought, I would, and I think I saw that I haven't caught up on emails today. It's been crazy in work. But I would make that suggestion.
Yeah, there's agreement. So we just need to talk, and I'll provide 2 names to you as soon as I have them.
Okay. And I ask, oh, Larry, you're on mute again. Larry, you're on mute again.
I keep taking it off. It doesn't like me. Joan, would you be willing to work with Patricia on the website in this context?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So guys, then I will see about finding a time for us to meet, to work on the website as a subgroup, to make recommendations to both the commissions as to what we think is best, and have you guys then review and approve. I already made the note that some of the MMD commissioners are in that overarching email. I did send to Marie the fact that I did not add other MMD commissioners who do not have an Albany County address, email address to access some of the files and things of that until they are official. One of the things that we did talk about was doing something to have people understand how to forward your email. And I know this is overdue. So that's something that I can, if anyone wants to stay on at the end, I can show you. Or I can try and do something at a later point where I have the time. So, and I think that might be interns. Is there anything I'm missing that you think we should?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
Yep. We've got our time cards down. We've got, other things going on getting things posted. So.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick and Leanne.
Yes.
Thank you.
Warren, did you?
No, I was just saying thank you to everyone, Patricia and her team.
Okay. Tom, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, the 2 contracts that we just voted to approve, I'm going to ask that we get some consensus here amongst the members of the redistricting commission that Larry, as our chair, is to get together with Patrick Collins to formally request these approvals. We've kind of cut our ties with the legislature clerk's office, but for some things like approval of contracts, it still has to go through someone who's used to doing this at the county, and it would be helpful if that was an attorney. And Patrick's about the only one we've got who is available. He also has the advantage of doing these regularly for the legislature for its contracts. But I would ask as well, Larry, if you could, when you talk to Patrick, ask him to see these contracts right through to signature, because unless there's somebody bird dogging these things, they can fall between the cracks, and we're already running enough behind that I think we want to make very sure that these things get adopted in short order, assuming that we do get approval from the contracts board on Monday.
And I certainly will reach out to Patrick when we're off. We, at the last meeting, the issue of indemnification had come up, and Dominic, you were the one that brought it up. And as I think has been mentioned, there is an opinion of the county attorney that we are subject to indemnification by Albany County, and the opinion also states that we have been duly appointed. So that I think that resolves the question. Dominic, does it in your mind?
Yes, very much. Thank
Were
you.
there any other questions or comments with regard to the indemnification issue?
I would just add that Patrick also did come up with a resolution from almost 30 years ago that kind of says, in its own way, officially approved by the county legislature, that people who are appointed to boards such as ours are considered to be employees and thus covered and indemnified by the county if there is any legal action against us.
And then the last thing that I think we should again discuss, we have talked about it, we have not concluded anything, and that is our first public hearing. And we had talked, seems like ages ago, it was probably a month ago, about trying to do a first public hearing in January or February. Well, we are now in January, and I think that probably trying to do a public hearing in January is a fool's errand. But I still think that that we might be able to get one in February, preliminary to beginning to draw any maps. And I would like to get the thoughts of the various commission members on that subject. Patricia.
I think this goes back to something we talked about before, which is getting the public more engaged. And I know that when I had one of my final conversations with the legislative side, you know, as they were handing off to me the Zoom account, this and that, they really did, and I should have really brought this up previously, they really did talk about social media presence as well. Because they said, if you want to live stream via Facebook, and I said, oh, you know, yes, we probably do want to live stream our public hearing if we're doing it remotely, you know, so forth. And they said, well, you have to get a Facebook account. So, and that's where what I was saying before is that I don't know where in the county to do that. And I don't always want to rely on them to really have to handhold us through that. I'd rather us really know who to go to and get it done ourselves. So I guess I'm mixing things up here, but what I'm saying is, in order to really do a good public hearing, we got to engage the public, guys. They don't, and we haven't done anything about that. So we have our website just about there. In terms of the commission, the MMD is coming. And my only consideration here is also for us, besides getting the public knowing what's going on and getting them engaged, is have we made a decision for certain, or do we need to wait a little bit, just in terms of, is this a public hearing strictly for the ACRC, or does it include the MMD? And that's at the heart of things, I think. And I have no opinion either which way.
Well, I'll weigh in on that last point. I think for people who are not familiar with what we're doing, it's going to be very hard for them to understand what the difference is between the redistricting commission and the MMD. So my own personal preference would be to make it joint, to make it together. that we're both seeking public input on this of what people would like to see come out of the redistricting process. I'm going to take a moment here because I forgot to say this earlier. We did have an approach, amazingly enough, from a Times Union reporter wanting to know what's going on with the redistricting commission. And Larry pointed him my way because I did volunteer to do something like that. And I did speak with that reporter this past Tuesday. The very first thing that I said to him was, we don't have a spokesperson. We have a chair, and that's Larry, but I'm working on publicizing our first public hearing. So I went over with him local law 8 and all of the ramifications of that, and how different this is from how redistricting has been done in the past and is still being done in some other jurisdictions. Talked about where the membership came from, all volunteers, how we have 9 appointed and the MMD is almost complete. Talked about where we were in the selection of mapping contractors and legal counsel, and the fact that we do plan on having at least 4 public hearings coming up, and would be looking at first one sometime in late January or in February, and it's looking more like February now. But he surprised me, first of all, because he was calling, I think because he must be the Times, Steve Hughes is the reporter's name, and he was calling because he must be doing stories about how local jurisdictions around here are doing redistricting. So he was just checking in with us, and the way he left it with me, again, surprised me. He doesn't want to write this story until we have a date for that first public hearing, because he wants to make that kind of the centerpiece of it. And in my opinion, you couldn't ask for better than that. I mean, that's going to assure that it gets out there, in addition to whatever we do in the way of social media and putting a notice in the paper. So that part of it works, but it really doesn't work to get back to him until we actually settle on a date. And I think Larry's right. I think maybe February is more in the crosshairs now as a target date. One thing that I would like to bring up is that the legislature clerk staff, again, has experience in holding public hearings. They talked to us earlier on about how virtual hearings actually get a better turnout. You get more people showing up, you get more people calling in, especially if they're at a distance, and yet it takes more work to do a public hearing virtually. So I think we'd have to take all of that into account with deciding how to do this and setting a date. I think maybe the legislature staff might be able to give us some pointers on whether evening is preferable to daytime and what day of the week would work based on their own experience with public hearings. But I think one of the things we're going to have to do is make up our minds to set a date on this, because that's going to trigger publicity and everything else that we want to do to get a good turnout.
I would agree with the concept of doing it jointly. I believe for the public to create, duplication and confusion is not good. And again, why do it twice when you could merge it and do it once? My opinion. I'm not speaking for anybody but myself.
And there may come a time once folks are starting to actually deal with maps that it may make sense for the MMD to be separated out in terms of the public comment.
I agree, and that could be shared right up front.
Right.
I have a question.
Yes, Joan.
Does anyone on this have the information that created the lawsuit so that we can, in the introduction or try to have something joint, speak of what the consent decree or what the legal people said that was necessary and required of MMD different from the commission? Because that's going to be important in the discussion, and I'm not sure if it needs to be in the initial discussion, but it will need to be talked about how it should be, who should be drawn first versus who should be drawn last. Is that going to be a part of our public hearing, or will someone provide this information that I do not at this moment believe that our commissioners have, that consent decree that describes in detail how this should go? Because without us being clear on the process, I think our public hearing is going to not go as well as it could be without having that information upfront. So what I'm going to ask Larry, if you can find out how we can get that consent decree to the commissioners before scheduling this public hearing. Thanks.
I will reach out and see what I can get.
I have two comments.
Sure.
I think in terms of the public hearings, we're probably going to be looking at some kind of hybrid approach. There's probably some hearings that can be done jointly, but I think there's also some that will need to be done separately. Also, with regard to the press, I think a story right before the first public hearing is good, but I think public engagement needs to start way before that. There's a lot of people that still don't know that a commission or an MMD subcommittee exists. There's a lot of people that still don't have any understanding of what redistricting is and the work that we're currently engaged in. So to wait until there's a public hearing scheduled, to me, is a lost opportunity to provide some information and education to the public around this whole process. So I think if we're really going to get the public engaged, and there's some level of engagement out there already just because of the work that has been done at the state level, but
Yes.
not to the level that we need it to be. If we're really going to get the public involved in this, where they participate in our efforts, we're really going to have to do outreach, and we're really going to have to do education around this whole thing. And I almost think that there needs to be a press release,
Yes.
and that can be separately or jointly.
Yes, Patricia?
Some of us are very close to what's happening or happened at the state level. Today was a meeting, by the way. And one of the things that they did have was you could actually log into their website. And when you, in order to submit something, you could do it in without or with, but you could actually get on their listserv so that they could push stuff out to you. That's fairly something that is common, but a bit sophisticated. And I have no idea, I would say beyond me knowing how to specifically do that on a website, but our webmaster mistress may. But I do think that it helped a lot with the state stuff to be getting stuff pushed out to interested people, because then they could forward it on to others as well, which is exactly what I saw. So I think we have a little bit of, and we've talked about this before because we talked about a press release before. I think we have a bit of a gap in terms of somebody owning what I'll call the public engagement piece a little bit, you know, how to get public engagement going. Bless you.
Thank you.
Marie, where do things stand with regard to completing the MMD subcommittee?
We still need a seventh member.
Still down one? Okay.
Yeah, we're still down one. In terms of the MMDs, we have a draft of the legal services one, which I actually shared with Karen Stone. We also have a draft of the mapping services one, which the group is looking at right now.
Thank you. Leif?
Yes, I was wondering with regard to public engagement and the whole problem or challenge of PR, is that something we could hire out? Could we, you know, do a informal kind of
Absolutely.
quote and find and get a public information officer on a part-time retainer basis? That's the question.
I don't see any reason why we can't. We do have a budget, and I'm sure that it is something that would make sense within our budget. I don't know that we are talking about a high dollar thing, and so we probably can reach out and get some consulting help. I have no idea where to reach out. It's not an area that I know at all. Public information in this area.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it either, but perhaps there might be some resources at the University of Albany.
So I was just gonna say, I think the PR piece is really the most critical part of it, because that's really what's gonna drive the success of getting the public engaged.
Ms. Patricia.
I had one other thought as a predecessor to us having this public hearing, is that obviously the legal counsel has to be on board, but we also have to go through the training that the legal counsel, I think, before we engage the public. So we sort of need a timeline, and I know, who put together that last one?
I think Mark did that.
Oh, you're right. It was Mark.
And so maybe for the next meeting, we sort of just brush it off a little bit and try and get down to the next level of detail of some of the concrete steps. I don't know, it was a milestone chart, so I don't know if that, but I think there's certain things that we have to get done before we can say that we're ready to go.
Yeah, you can zoom into the time. The timeline needed to be cleaned up anyways, public hearing and all those kind of stuff. So you can actually drill into it month by month now if you want to, rather than just like we said, we started out with milestones. These were our goals. Now we can drill down a little bit deeper if we want to. And I'm not aware of what kind of training are we going to need to go through?
We have to go through legal training. We have to make sure we're all educated on the ins and outs, the do's and the don'ts, so that we don't step on anything we shouldn't step on. Do you have any idea how much of a time or how much time that's going to require? Would that be like an hour meeting with the lawyer? He's going to tell us where the landmines are. Really, Well, we did talk about before that there's certain things we all should be reading and familiar with, including, the voting rights, certain section of the Voting Rights Act and so forth. But I don't know, did it cover it in the RFPs at all? I don't know.
Yeah, it
Nice.
wasn't part of RFP because it's part of the local law as well. So Mark, it's pretty extensive. It's not just a 1 hour or two of watch out for this. I mean, they want to make sure we're all at a certain level, a competent level. We know about the federal voting and redistricting issues in general. So it's a pretty beefy, hefty piece, and that is a part of what the councils put in their bid.
Okay.
And as far as us not knowing a lot before our first public hearing, that of course is important, but we're asking the public. We're not going there to present that we're experts on anything. This is outreach, and it's us basically saying, what do you want? Who are you? We're here to listen, and we're here. We're not, you know what? And if they ask us a question, we're working on it. We're here to get information from you, right? This is outreach. This is not a disclosure of what we know. So we don't have to be, I think, overly cautious about not knowing a lot. We're reaching out to the public, not trying to tell them what we know.
Yeah, that was my concern, because I'm like, if we're going to go this in depth, then you can't have one by the end of January or first part of February, but I agree with your point. This is a listening session. We want to know what you guys are thinking so we can go back and take it and do our work. So we don't have to, we can slip those landmines without having in-depth knowledge. I understand. That's good.
Yeah, I would definitely, the state IRC called it specifically a listening session. I mean, they had opening remarks. You can go back, it's all on their website. They had opening remarks and then they just took input. And I will tell you, I know right away, as soon as you do it, we're gonna get a set of maps pushed in by somebody I know. I haven't looked at them. I've been hands, nope, nope, nope.
Have a
There
homework.
there is a podcast that's been prepared by the New York State Association of Counties. It might be wise to get that and have, if the commission members haven't looked at that, it's very informative. And perhaps somebody could contact them to, provide it.
Do we need to, as a group, put together a reading list that everyone should, it's like check off, okay, all right, I read that rule, I read that, so we don't go at this hit or miss and then, oh geez, I didn't even know about that one. So maybe with everyone's understanding of this process, let's put together a reading list that we're all responsible to, dig into.
And that's what I would assume the lawyers, the legal counsel would provide. Here's what you need to have read. That's just my assumption.
And thanks for the suggestion, Dominic. I will reach out to the Association of Counties.
Thank you.
Somebody should reach out maybe to community radio in Albany. I mean, we're the Albany County Commission. That's WCAA, Grand Street Arts. They have a number of shows, news shows, broadcasts, PSAs, all of that. So I have a contact there, but that's just part of our overall picture. So, me having that one little contact's not as important because we got a larger piece, but I just wanted us to be cognizant of that as well.
Can you say that again?
It's Grand Street's Art Center on Grand Street, downtown Albany.
Okay.
They have a community radio station that's run out of Grand Street, and it's called WCAA 107.3 FM. So it broadcasts on a low wattage in Albany. You got to be within like 5 miles or something. But they also broadcast streaming online. So that is a way, and especially all the time, they do PSAs and news shows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And another resource would be libraries. Sometimes libraries have stations that people can input information on, like public access notices.
Yes, they do. And there's one in Albany as well. Yep.
It's a little dicey there, guys, on that. Just be careful. The public access that existed for the city of Albany is now under Schenectady. It's a little weird, and there's some hurt feelings. But as a person who promotes events all the time with the league, and I know the league would put something out, just notifying people, we always have a partners list, and as well, and ask people to promote, as well as go to the libraries, not just have public access, but they also have a lot of people who subscribe to their newsletters, and to get it in their newsletters on a timely basis is important. There's a ton of outlets that the league has, and I'm welcome to share a lot of that, but I cannot take any kind of a lead on this.
Larry, it looked to me like Joan was trying to weigh in on that, but I wasn't sure. Joan, are you still with us?
I am still here. And, but I think that it was a good idea with the reading, and it's a good idea to come up with some suggestions for outreach. The neighborhood organizations, the local organizations that do these things. So there are a lot of different organizations in the county of Albany that deal with people. We need to contact all of them to get this information out. And they will have other resources as well that they could provide. So I think we have to come back with some suggestions of these outreach avenues and that we could bring back to the next meeting.
Patricia, are you?
It's time, guys. So can we
Yes.
just make a decision about Thursday or whatever?
I had expected that we would spend extensive time in discussion of the RFQ and the RFP. And I thought that we probably would need to meet on Thursday to do what we have just been doing, which is the administrative portion. If, does anyone think that we should meet on Thursday, that there are issues that we need to meet again Thursday as opposed to waiting until Monday? Anyone?
Just the only thing I think we thought about, you know, we would need a Thursday meeting is if something came back with the background checks that threw that off. But if there's no red flags, then I think we're good.
That's my impression too, Mark. So I would appreciate it if folks can kind of keep Thursday at 4 o'clock open, but at this point, we will not plan on meeting again on Thursday. And with that, yes, Patricia.
I believe we said 4:30. I think it was
I said
4.
4.
Yeah, my notes say
Oh, you're right.
4:30
It was-
because
it-
it was
it-
Julia
yes.
needed 4:30.
Yes, you are correct. Thank you.
Sorry. Mhm.
Appreciate that.
But
4:30.
it would still be for an hour if it started at 4:30?
No more than, and certainly, yes. Okay, and thank you all. Good work. It's a good meeting. Good night.
Good night.
Good
Happy
night,
New
all.
Year, everybody.
Thank you. Good
Night.
meeting.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.
Bye-bye now.
Happy New Year.
Thanks.